We are up to the third game in the Assassin's Creed series now, boys, girls, and gamers, and I'm still having fun, I'm still enjoying it. Haven't hit a wall yet, and hopefully I won't. But that doesn't mean that everything is sunshine and rainbows. It's more assassinations, blood, and death. I'm not sure where I'm going with this. I will mention up front that I played Brotherhood on the Ezio collection, which doesn't come with the multiplayer portion of the game, but I was able to access the multiplayer through Xbox backwards compatibility. Unfortunately, the only multiplayer I was able to play was the tutorial, as no one seems to be playing, or at the very least, I couldn't find a game, so I won't be talking about the multiplayer in this video. But I will say that back in the day, I did play a bit of the multiplayer, and I enjoyed it for what it was. It was never going to be the next Call of Duty in terms of the amount of people who played it, but it was a nice different kind of multiplayer experience, sort of like Uncharted's multiplayer or The Last of Us's multiplayer. Just a cool little unique multiplayer experience. I was genuinely surprised to find in my research into the game and hearing what other people had to say about it that Brotherhood is actually a lot of people's favorite Assassin's Creed game, including my brother. It surprised me because after replaying it, well, I don't feel the same. Although I definitely can see where a lot of those people are coming from, and I'll get to that later in the video. Just know that if you are someone who loves Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, I do too. I'm not here to try and ruin the game for you, but in my AC retrospective that I'm doing, I'm taking a look at all the games with a more critical eye than I have in the past, and I've actually changed a couple of my opinions on certain aspects of every game that I've played so far. With all that said, spoilers inbound for the game and probably for the previous game, so let's get right into the video. There doesn't seem to be as much information about the history and development of this game that's readily available compared to the previous ones. We do know, however, that Assassin's Creed Brotherhood had less than a year of development and was released 364 days after Assassin's Creed 2, one day less than a full year. Patrice Désilets, who was the creative director for the previous two Assassin's Creed games, and the guy who came up with the idea for Assassin's Creed, left Ubisoft Montreal just before E3 of that year after completing his work on the project to take a creative break. So how did Ubisoft manage to pull this off without the game being a complete fucking mess? Manpower. Pure and simple bodies. Ubisoft had their Montreal studio be the main studio working on the game, but they also brought in their Quebec, Annecy, Singapore, and Bucharest studios to help develop the game. Here's a graph that was shown at GDC 2018 from one of the developers on the Assassin's Creed series detailing how their multi-studio development has worked across the series. It isn't fully detailed, but you get the idea. From this chart you can see that Assassin's Creed 3's development actually started around the same time as Brotherhood's, only was worked on by a different team at UB Montreal. So after attempting to play the multiplayer part of Brotherhood on the original version of the game, it really became apparent to me just how much of a visual boost the Ezio collection really is. The resolution is higher, the performance is better, and the load-in and pop-in are a lot better. Brotherhood also looks better than AC2. Not by a lot, but it is an improvement. Animations are still fantastic, making the new sub-weapon system really pop in combat. Ezio can fire off bullets while stabbing dudes with his swords. There always is a new animation in each game that just makes me go, "God damn!" every time I see it. The lighting is great, the draw distance is great, the character models are great, everything is great visually speaking. Except for Rome itself, in my opinion. To be honest, Rome might be my least favorite setting in any Assassin's Creed game I've played. Some of the sights that Rome has to offer are legitimately cool, like the Colosseum and the Castel, but overall Rome is very bland, I find. It's a whole lot of greenish, brownish, grayish fields and indistinct buildings that all blur together way faster than any of the previous Assassin's Creed games have. What also hurts the setting is that Rome is the only city in the game, so there just isn't really anything to break up the monotony of the color palette and world design. Florence had so much color and Venice had so much character, but Rome just lacks both for me. And I understand that this may have been what Rome actually looked like back in the beginning of the 16th century, and Ubisoft really wanted to recreate it exactly as it was. But if that is the case, then maybe they should have just picked a different setting. Rome is 3 times larger than Florence, and was the biggest map that Ubisoft Montreal had ever made up until that point. And part of me wonders if the very short development cycle for Brotherhood, along with such a dramatic size increase, is responsible for most of Rome feeling kind of boring. All of the voice cast reprised their roles and do an excellent job with all of their performances, the standout once again being Roger Craig Smith as Ezio. The sound design is excellent with what I'm calling the trademark Assassin's Creed atmosphere in full force here. The musical score was composed by Jesper Kyd, who has composed every Assassin's Creed score so far, and while I don't think that it's as memorable for me as Assassin's Creed 2 score was, and granted that's a high bar to live up to, it's still very good. It definitely sounds more ominous and dark than AC2's score, which is appropriate considering the state of corruption and disrepair that Roma is in. At some points, it even sounds like it could fit right into a God of War game and be right at home. There's lots of rhythmic elements and choirs creating a very dramatic, intense atmosphere, but there's still the melodies here that made AC2 scores so memorable, albeit some of the melodies are more moody and twisted sounding. I'm struggling a little to find things to talk about in the presentation portion of this video, because Brotherhood is not a giant leap forward like Assassin's Creed 2 was from the first game. It's more of an incremental improvement, more of Assassin's Creed 2.5 if you would. And while some of you might say that it isn't 2.5, it's more than that. The visuals do little to convince me otherwise, and neither does the story. Brotherhood begins exactly where we left off with AC2. Ezio is in the vault, having just finished talking to Minerva and throwing down with Rodrigo Borgia. Ezio escapes the vault with the Apple of Eden and, along with Mario, makes his way to Monteregione. At this point in Ezio's life, he's basically accomplished everything he set out to do in AC2, minus killing Rodrigo, and he seems ready to retire from it all, or at the very least take a very long break. His relaxation is short-lived, however, when Cesare Borgia, the son of Rodrigo, attacks the villa with his forces in retaliation for Ezio's actions. Mario is killed in the ensuing battle, Cesare gets the apple, Caterina Sforza is captured, and Ezio is gravely wounded. He attempts to follow Cesare back to Rome, but passes out on his horse and wakes up in a home in the care of a random woman who nursed him back to health. Ezio meets with Machiavelli, who tells him the overall state of affairs in Rome. The people are downtrodden and impoverished under the current rule of the Borgia, and the assassins don't really have a presence here either. So Ezio sets out to reclaim the apple, rebuild the Brotherhood in Rome, and destroy the Borgia once and for all. On the present day side of things, we see Desmond, Lucy, Rebecca, and Sean make their way to the Monteregione villa as they need a place to hide out from the Templars who are hot on their trail. This game differs a little from the previous games, as you can exit the Animus at almost any point in the story and have Desmond chat with the mystery gang and read their emails. There isn't much to actually do in the villa, but it's a cool idea. Not much really happens in the present day portion of the story until the very end, where we get yet another shocking twist ending. I'm beginning to think that Ubisoft might have watched a little bit too much of M. Night Shyamalan's movies during the development of the AC games. Desmond, who was possessed by Juno, another of the ones who came before, was forced to stab and kill Lucy. The first time I played this, I was like, yo, what the fuck? Why did they just kill Lucy? Well, it's not actually stated anywhere in Brotherhood as far as I'm aware. Turns out Lucy was a Templar, although you might not know that unless you play the Lost Archive DLC for Revelations. There's a couple hints as to Lucy's true alliance in the game, like right before Desmond stabs her, Juno says something about beware the cross or something. Cross obviously referring to Templars, and there's this moment in the villa where there's a path of red footprints leading from where the van was to the back of the villa where Lucy is. I don't know why her footprints would be red and she wouldn't be, but I do think it's a cool bit of foreshadowing. However, you really need to explain at some point in plain English what the fucking twist is. Because back when I first played this game, I was incredibly confused and expected some answers from Revelations because, you know, it's called Revelations. But there weren't any because I didn't get the DLC for Revelations back in the day. I found out definitively that Lucy was a traitor in Assassin's Creed 3 when I think Desmond made a comment about it and I was like, oh, I guess that's what happened. Putting the explanation for the twist of your game in the next game's paid DLC is retarded and a failure of storytelling. That's like putting the explanation of a movie's twist in the next movie's bonus features on the Blu-ray. Do I believe that they had intended for Lucy to be a Templar triple agent the whole time? No, I don't. It just seems too convoluted, like they were making it up as they went along. Remember in the first AC game when Desmond first gets Eagle Vision and he sees Lucy with a blue outline? Yeah, that doesn't really make sense anymore. I think that they wanted to have another twist like the first two games, and this was the best they could come up with. Ezio's story has its own problems. Well, maybe not Ezio himself, as just like the last game, his actual character arc and progression are done well. We see Ezio iron out his character flaws in Brotherhood, such as being too protective of his sister, who is like 40 years old at this point and doesn't look a day over 20. Them auditory genes, though. We see him deal with his pride and stubbornness, which threatened to tear him and Machiavelli apart, and ultimately Ultimately, we see him rebuild the Brotherhood and become the mentor, the leader of the Brotherhood in Italy. Unfortunately, the parts of the story that aren't about Ezio learning and growing as a person and assassin aren't as successful. I like Cesare as the villain of this game in theory. He's acted well, he's written well, and I felt he was more threatening than Rodrigo ever was. But I just never felt a connection of any real kind to him, be it anger or hatred or anything. I mean, yes, he kills Mario, so I understand why Ezio wants to kill him, but just because the protagonist cares about something doesn't automatically mean the player will care about it as well. He's a serviceable villain, and honestly, I think that's how I would describe the story overall. It's not bad, but it feels ultimately kind of unnecessary. The amount of important things that happen in this game, such as Lucy being killed, Claudia becoming an assassin, or Ezio becoming the leader of the Brotherhood are cool, but the rest of the story kind of just feels like filler to pad out the game length, like Caterina Sforza's part in the story. Just like in AC2, she's pointless here. She shows up at the beginning of the game, then gets captured for a while, then you rescue her and she fucks off for the rest of the game. You could cut her story out entirely and it would not make a difference. Same for La Volpe distrusting Machiavelli. It's pointless fluff that doesn't go anywhere, which even with all this extraneous shit, the story is still much shorter than Assassin's Creed 2's story, which I actually appreciated because I felt like AC2's story was very bloated and unnecessarily long. But Brotherhood seems to have the opposite problem, where the story feels kind of short and filled with unnecessary fluff. If they could have written a better overarching plot to place Ezio's character arc in, I think the story could have been pretty damn great. The most important changes made in Brotherhood are gameplay ones. There are so many small improvements to the game that it's kinda crazy. For instance, now you can ride a horse in the entirety of Rome, albeit at the cost of the gallop button, unfortunately, which is now for jumping from the horse, and you can actually perform horse assassinations by jumping from your horse to an enemy horse. You can also call your horse at any point, similar to Red Dead Redemption. Free running is largely unchanged, but they've now added these lifts that let you scale buildings faster, and Ezio can unlock a parachute after completing all the Leonardo missions in the game that allows him to float down from high areas if there isn't a leap of faith available. Leonardo missions are pretty cool. Leonardo has been forced to work for the Borgias, designing new vehicles of war for them, and he gets in contact with Ezio to get him to destroy his inventions. These missions take place in their own separate areas, and each one has a different vehicle that you will get to operate, like a small cannon boat or an actual tank. These missions are a little gimmicky, but they do stand out for being different from the rest of the missions in the game. Leonardo also acts as a shop where you can purchase specific upgrades from him, like the double hidden blade. My favorite parts of Assassin's Creed 2 were the Assassin's Tombs, and they make a return in Brotherhood in a slightly different way. They are now the layers of Romulus, which are being sought out by the followers of Romulus, who are a cult that was formed by the Templars. You again have to find keys to unlock a powerful armor set, only instead of Altair's armor, it's the armor of Brutus, who was one of the guys who killed Julius Caesar. In the combat department, enemies' health bars will now blink when they are about to attack, making it easier to know when and who to counter, and Ezio now has the ability to chain together kills by pressing X after a kill and holding the left stick towards a target. It can be pretty sweet to string together a bunch of chain kills and counters, really emphasizing how skilled Ezio is at this point in his career as an assassin, and the aforementioned sub-weapon system allows Ezio to basically dual wield either the throwing knives or gun, meaning he can switch between stabbing a dude or shooting a dude in the middle of combat in a more fluid way than before, and can essentially perform a double kill. There are also a couple new weapons that Ezio can use, like the poison darts, which allow him to poison guards from a distance, and my favorite addition, the crossbow. The crossbow can silently kill guards more effectively than the throwing knives, and is comparable to the gun in damage. It's pretty damn OP, but it is mitigated a bit by being only available through purchase for a large sum. You don't unlock it during the story, you have to buy it. Another thing you have to buy in order to use a specific kind of weapon is the heavy sheath, which allows Ezio to carry more weapons such as heavy axes. You can also perform an insta-kill on enemies by just fucking chucking it. An awesome tweak to the inventory is that now you can manually assign each weapon and item to a spot on the quick select instead of it being predetermined like in the last game. With the villa destroyed, you might be wondering how the renovation system is going to work in Brotherhood. Brotherhood? Well, now the entirety of Rome can be renovated. There are multiple shops of each kind to renovate. There are landmarks such as the Colosseum and aqueducts to fix. There are tunnels to renovate, which act as the fast travel system in the game. You need to renovate tunnels in each district in order to unlock that fast travel option, and there are faction buildings to assign. But you can only start renovating places once you've freed them from Borgia control. In each district in Roma, there is a Borgia tower that is led by a captain who you need to kill in order to be able to burn down the tower and send a signal to the Borgia that this area is now under assassin control. The towers also double as the viewpoints to uncover areas of the map, but for some reason you can't do both at once. You need to synchronize the viewpoint first and then burn the tower, otherwise you'll have to climb back up the tower for a second time if you forget, which I did a couple times. There are now faction specific missions such as the courtesan and thief missions, and each faction gets their own headquarters where you can complete guild challenges such as doing X number of assassinations in a certain way. This challenge idea has also been added to basically every mission in the game, where to achieve 100% synchronicity you need to complete the mission as well as a specific challenge for that mission, such as finishing it within a certain amount of time or by not being detected once, etc. Personally, I've never really given a shit about these kinds of challenges in games unless there's actually a good incentive for doing them, like in Doom where you get upgrade points if you complete the level challenges, but it's a cool addition to the formula nonetheless. VR challenges have also been added to the game, and I don't mean VR in the Oculus or Index way, I mean VR is in a separate program in the Animus. These sort of serve as extra tutorials and mechanic specific challenges, such as do a certain number of chain kills in a row. Again, not my thing, but it's a good addition that didn't actually make its way into any other Assassin's Creed games as far as I'm aware. There are a couple more mission types in the game, such as the Templar Agents assignments, which sort of give a little backstory to the characters you can play as in the multiplayer portion of the game, as well as the Christina missions, which do a good job of fleshing out Ezio's relationship with Christina and shows that she wasn't just some random girl Ezio slept with at the beginning of AC2 who we never see again. She was much more than that to Ezio. But my favorite addition to the game is without a doubt the Brotherhood mechanic. Ezio can rescue civilians who are being attacked by guards, similar to how Altair could in AC1, except in Brotherhood you can recruit these people to the Assassin Order and train them to become assassins. Each recruit can gain experience and level up, improving their armor and weapons by being sent on missions to various places across Europe, and you gain rewards such as money or items upon their successful completion. Your assassins do have the potential to permanently die, however this never happened to me as the game tells you how likely it is for your recruits to complete the mission, so I never sent my assassins on missions unless there was at least a 95% chance of success. You can also call on any recruit that isn't on a mission to aid you in gameplay at almost any point in the game. They will assassinate targets or aid you in combat, and if you have 3 full bars you can even call in an arrow storm and kill all enemies in your vicinity. It's a pretty sweet mechanic, albeit still a little shallow in this game. There is a ton of stuff to do here, and to be honest I didn't complete most of it. I didn't bother doing the challenges, as I mentioned these don't really interest me, and I didn't finish the courtesan missions, thief missions, assassination contracts, or Templar agent missions. They're just not interesting enough for me to feel compelled to do them all. You get a short cutscene for some of the missions, then you do the mission, which most of them are very simple. Go here, kill them, then you're done. There aren't any interesting storylines or characters you meet or rewards that you get aside from the Christina missions and Romulus tombs, which is why I completed both of them. It's very much quantity over quality. This is very rudimentary open world side mission design. Now I'm not asking for RPG level side quests like The Witcher 3 has, but Rockstar and Rocksteady have shown how to do open world side missions that are interesting in their content and add to the game's story and characters for years now, and Brotherhood just doesn't have that. Granted, I'm not going to be too harsh on the game for this since it is an older game in the series, but as we get closer to the latest AC games I will be getting more severe on this point if it doesn't improve. I know some of you will probably be upset that I didn't do all the side missions and totally complete the game, but I'm not going to drive myself crazy just so I can say that I explored every nook and cranny of the game. I will try out all the things the games have to offer, but I won't force myself to finish them all if they don't capture and hold my interest. The big thing to talk about is how this is the definitive birth of the crazy amount of editions that Ubisoft has for their games nowadays, as there were 7, yes, 7 different versions of the game. The Standard Edition, Special Edition, Auditory Edition, Collector's Edition, Limited Codex Edition, Digital Deluxe Edition, and the Da Vinci Edition. I'm not gonna bother explaining the differences for each fucking one. If you're curious, you can look it up on Wikipedia. But aside from the ludicrous amount of editions that Brotherhood has, I don't actually think that Ubisoft was trying to pull much else here. Ubisoft released 2 free multiplayer DLC updates for all platforms, as well as a free day 1 DLC single-player storyline called the Copernicus Conspiracy as a PS3 exclusive, which is actually kinda shitty. The Da Vinci Disappearance was released as a paid single-player DLC storyline and is actually one of the better DLCs in the AC franchise. All in all, not an enormous amount of bullshit here except for the various editions, which I still don't understand the purpose of. This does officially mark the beginning of the AC series yearly release schedule, which as I mentioned in previous videos probably hurts the series more than helps it, but there's not much we can do about it. Thankfully in recent years Ubisoft has had a couple years between releases, but we ain't getting to that in this series for a while. So this video is the shortest video of the series so far, but that's because there isn't much that I wanted to say about this game. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood is not a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, and I quite enjoyed playing through it again for my 3rd or 4th playthrough. I do think that in the end, the game does justify itself enough to be its own game rather than be an expansion for AC2. But personally, I actually do think that this is the weakest of the 3 Ezio games. It has the weakest story, the least interesting setting, and even though there is a lot of content here, a lot of it is not that deep or interesting beyond surface level. But the gameplay has been improved from AC2, so I struggle to say that it's worse than the other games. This is still a really good game, and it absolutely stands with AC2 and Revelations, but it is my least favorite of the 3, so I'm gonna give Assassin's Creed Brotherhood a 7.5 out of 10. Another one bites the dust. 3rd video down, a lot more to go. If you like this video, then please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. And please share your thoughts about AC Brotherhood in the comments. Do you hate me? I hope you don't hate me, but if you do hate me, that's okay. I understand. I hate me too. See you later.